Alex Del Carmen, Ph.D., joins us right now. He's the executive director and professor of School of Criminology there, Criminal Justice and Strategic Studies there at Tarleton State University. And Professor, we appreciate you joining us. Dr. Del Carmen, always a pleasure to have you on. Maybe you could set us straight here. It's a big number. What do you think about this story? And if I can ask you, I mean, it does seem like this number is rather unusually large.
Yeah, first and foremost, good morning, and thanks for having me on the show this morning. I do think that the number is actually historically high, and it is in the criminal justice system, we call it extraordinary and highly unusual that the president would actually issue such an executive order and affect so many people at the same time.
Do we know anything? And obviously, this president was, his policies kind of the kind of guy that he wanted to do things like this. He wanted to set historic precedents and he was a historic president in a lot of ways in his own right. But do we know anything about any of these folks that are going to be released?
Well, what I think this is more symbolic than substantive. And what I mean by that is I think President Obama, whether we agree or not agree with what he did, what he ended up doing is making a bigger point about the fact that the criminal justice system is saturated with nonviolent offenders.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, is costing taxpayers millions of dollars. And so this was more of a symbolic gesture than anything else. What we do know, some of the background that's been offered on some of the individuals that will be released, for the most part, they're drug-related offenders. That doesn't necessarily make it better, but I'm just making the point that it's more symbolic than substantive.
Well, and, I'm the kind of guy that I look at some of these laws, and I would say, look, it does look like, in many ways, some cases this system might be broken when we look at some of these laws that are on the books as far as nonviolent offenses and how long that they're locked up for. Let's just go back. Let's get a little history lesson. Some of these drug offenses, let's talk about what they were. And as a criminologist, what you see when you look at the history of why these laws came into place, why these folks are locked up anyway.
Right. So you look back at the 1980s during the Reagan administration, and we really widened the net. We made the net wider in the context that we put more people in prison than any other time in the history of the U.S. because we criminalized many, and we extended the sentences for many of the drug offenders. My concern with this is not necessarily that it's drug offenders versus violent offenses, but how many times do you actually see that drug-related offenses do carry violence or promote violence? And so when we talk about the fact that these are just drug offenders, they may very well be just drug offenders, but the bottom line is that they probably cause someone else to engage in violence.
So let's talk about that. Give me an example. Is this a guy that's got a bag of weed? Are we talking a guy that's got cocaine? What are we talking about? And what are you talking about as far as his concern with what other violence may be connected to it, Doctor?
So for instance, it's obviously the range of individuals that are being whose sentences are being commuted is rather extensive, and so you have a mixed bag among those that are going to be getting released earlier than expected. But at the same time, without generalizing, you do have an array of individuals that not only carry, but also those individuals that have been drug offenders for a long time. And then in addition to that, individuals that sell and consume drugs. And so as a result of all of that, it's inevitable that drugs are tied into violence. I mean, we've seen that over and over again in domestic violence calls, in the exchange of drugs for money. And so inevitably, even though the quote-unquote selling point is that these are drug offenders and they're nonviolent offenders, there is no question that there is a correlation between drugs and violence.
Dr. Del Carmen's on the phone with us right now from Tarleton State University in Texas, talking about this historic 214 sentences were commuted. Now, these are federal. So does that make a difference in terms of things when we look at the fact that these are actual federal prisoners?
Right. So, I mean, obviously they have committed federal offenses, and therefore they're part of the jurisdiction of the federal government. So by virtue of that, they are federal offenses. But again, I think in the context of all the offenses and all the offenders that are in prison currently, this is just a minute number. But I think, again, it's just to make the bigger point that this was more symbolic than substantive. And if you read carefully what he said at the end of his decision, one of the things that he justified is the fact that this is going to resonate with the conservatives out there by saying that we're going to save thousands of dollars in the context of the prison, sentencing for these offenders. While I don't disagree with that, I think he was trying to make both sides of the equation happy.
It's interesting, 214, when we look at what they're locked up for, I think that I saw at 67 or so, and I don't know if that's that number, you have to go back and check that, but it was around 60 some odd that were in for life, that had life sentences. What would they be in for on a life sentence? Is that a drug charge? And then these are just guesses, again, because we don't have the specifics on any of these.
Right. So a lot of times when you think of a life sentence, you're automatically assuming that this person is next to a serial killer. But that's not necessarily the case. Many of our laws in the books at the federal level, they actually commit someone for life if the person has committed the same type of offense repeatedly, and so and especially if it relates to drugs. And so, when you look back and you say that the behavior has been repeated and augmented every time that the behavior is committed, then that justifies in the eyes of the criminal justice system at the federal level to put the person in for life. Is
this something that you'll see recidivism when it comes to these folks getting back on the street? Are they going to just go back to what they know?
Hard to say, because we've never had such a large sample of individuals to test afterwards. And the sad part is by the time they are recidivists and we actually find out, no one's going to be interested in being able to track it down. And secondly, the president is going to be out of office by then. And so by virtue of that, it's hard to pass judgment on what that number is going to be like. But based on previous behavior, we anticipate that some of them will be coming back to the system.
Very interesting. And most of these will get out by the end of the year?
That's right. Yeah, most of them are actually going to get out by December.
Dr. Alex Del Carmen, appreciate you joining us today. Alex Del Carmen, Ph.D., Executive Director and Professor, School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University in Texas. Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you for having me.